All right, Nick, let's talk some Ohio State football. This team is one of the hottest teams in all of college football right now, gunning for that college football playoff. And I think a team like this has a set pattern on what they're going to do to keep themselves at a high level. And that, of course, is going after the recruiting game. And they've added another big time commit. Well, to us, we're going to tell you why he's a big time commit in this 2025 class. But, Nick, I want to get into the article right now and we can talk about all of the particulars on the other side. This is from over on 3 Sports. It says 3-star wide receiver Javon Bogs of Cocoa High announces his commitment to Ohio State Monday morning. The 6'1", 190-pounder chose the Buckeyes over Penn State and Florida. The Sunshine State wide receiver joins Coach Ryan Day in the Buckeyes 2025 class. He is the second commitment in the class, joining 4-star quarterback Tavian St. Clair. Boggs ranks as the number 57 wide receiver and the number 52 player in the state of Florida. Now, Nick, this guy, by first glance, you say, a 3-star receiver going to Ohio State doesn't really make sense. What is going on here? But I think if we get into this, and I'm going to let you talk about it, you're the resident Florida expert here, that this guy, he is probably a little bit under recruited, and Ohio State may have snagged a steal of a player out of the state of Florida. But before I get your thoughts on all of this, Nick, I want to ask Ohio State fans, have a big game coming up, conference game. So Purdue probably not going to be too tough, but you got to keep your head on a swivel. These games can sneak up on you if you're not careful. But let us know in the comments below, what are your predictions for the score of Ohio State versus Purdue? Let us know your score predictions in the comment section below. But Nick, what do you think about Boggs joining this Ohio State team?
So the very first thing to note, anytime you're talking about a recruiting class that's a few years in the future, right? This is I'm talking about the 2025 class, right? So this is again a few years away. When you're looking at these big recruiting sites, whether it's on 3 Sports, and they're phenomenal, 24/7 Sports is also phenomenal. The reality is, until they get closer to this graduation date, they're not going to highly evaluate guys from mid-sized to smaller schools. They just can't. They don't have the resources. There's literally hundreds and thousands of potential prospects across the country. They're going to focus on evaluating very aggressively the big name guys at the big, massive powerhouse schools in Texas, in Ohio, in Pennsylvania, in California, in Florida, areas like that. Cocoa High is not a big school. It is not a power. It is a 4A classification in the state of Florida that starts at 8A, 8A, 7A, 6A, 5A, and then 4A. So we're talking bottom half in terms of school size in Florida. It's not like it's in the Miami area or anything like that. It's not like it's in the muck with like Pahokee and Belgrade, which is obviously a football power as well. It's kind of its own entity a little bit there. And that means players from these areas early on in the recruiting cycles, they go largely unnoticed and underrated. And then suddenly, all of a sudden, they get a few more years under the belt. They start going to camps, and suddenly the recruiting rankings fly through the charts. I think that's what we're going to get in Boggs here for no other reason than Brian Hartline loves this guy. And if Hartline loves somebody, I'm all in, because this guy has a phenomenal success record in terms of recruiting receivers and developing them as well.
Yeah, Nick, I think this guy has something around 10 5-star players that he's recruited already. Not all receivers, of course, but just a majority of them are, and they're all massive hits. We look through Emeka Egbuka, who's been great, Jackson Smith and Jigba, who's been great. There's on and on. He even helped recruit Jameson Williams. We all know he went to Ohio State before he ended up flipping to Alabama. Marvin Harrison Jr., of course, just hit after hit after hit from Heartland. So as you said, this guy, he knows the wide receiver position. And if he likes a guy like Boggs, you like Boggs, I like Boggs, I think he's going to be a great pickup for Ohio State. But this guy is already dominating his team. He's averaging 130 yards a game early on season, 14 total touchdowns this high school season already. This guy is a machine in the state of Florida. He's running through the competitions, and usually when you see a guy this talented, you want to see him put up gaudy numbers versus teams. So he's doing his part. He's beating the lesser competition and showing that he's truly a spectacular talent. And I think Ohio State knows how to use these wide receivers very, very well. I think he's going to have a successful career, and Ohio State has shown they can make absolute superstars out of young, talented wide receivers. So this guy, I think him, Ohio State, match made in heaven.
Yeah, I agree with 100 with you 100% there. And it's important to understand, again, these big recruiting services for these underclassmen in high school, they're not going to reevaluate them in terms of their star rating on a week by week basis unless they're one of the big names from one of the big powers, unless it's like Dylan Raiola or some massive recruit, right? They're not going to get the attention. This is a guy, like you alluded to, is dominating, which is what you would expect from a big time prospect and mid-level Florida football. I'm willing to bet a lot of money at this point that after the season and all his numbers go through and he goes to a few camps and some of these college coaches see him run 40s and see him run routes, he's going to go from a 3-star guy below the radar to a 4 or 5-star guy. The Ohio State Buckeyes, they're really good at recruiting the big name guys and getting them in the door. But I tell you what, if they can go down into Florida and pick underrated mid-level guys and get them to commit, they just become an unstoppable recruiting machine, because that's really the only advantage schools in the Southeast have over a program like Ohio State, is that they know the territory and they could potentially go in and get some of these under the radar guys early. If Ohio State can then go in and get them now, probably thanks to Coach Hartline, again, phenomenal job. I mean, I don't see any team really beating them. They're going to be a number 1, number 2 team for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, for as long as they can really want to be. Because if they can win these guys in the South, there's just no one that can compete with them. They would just be too good.